Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, a local lawmaker announces her bid for U.S. Senate. We talked to Angie Nixon about fighting for Democratic advantage in an increasingly Republican state. Later in the program, we talked to local author Nikesha Williams about exploring a generational jinx in her new book, The Seven Daughters of Dupree. But first, earlier this morning, State Representative Angie Nixon formally announced she was entering the race for U.S. Senate. The announcement puts the Jacksonville Democrat in an uphill battle against the existing Republican senator appointed incumbent Ashley Moody, who was handpicked for the job by Governor Ron DeSantis. We spoke to Nixon just about an hour ago from her office in Tallahassee to find out why she's in. Let's take a listen. Welcome, Representative Angie Nixon. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So a big announcement this morning. You know, Florida hasn't had a Democratic senator since Bill Nelson was defeated by Rick Scott back in 2018. And I'm curious what makes you think you have a shot at this seat, given sort of the political realities of Florida and how it's becoming ever more red.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you all for having me today. And so I just want to say that after traveling across the state for the last few months and speaking with Floridians all over the state, people are simply tired. They're tired of their paychecks not spending the way they used to. They are tired of the political rhetoric that is coming out of Washington, D.C. They are tired and they are struggling. And so I'm actually running because change can't wait. And when it comes to the math, right, when it comes to the math, like the math that we should really be concerned with, they're not just the numbers of how many Democrats are registered to vote versus Republicans. It should be the fact that people's health care costs have doubled over the past few years. And that was with Republican senators in office here in our state. And at the end of the day, this is a people power campaign, one in which I am going to talk to as many people as I can. I am a community organizer. I do not just consider myself an elected official. I am someone who cares about everyone. And so I plan to fight for every Floridian in our state to ensure that every family has stability and every worker has dignity. And I think that that message is going to resonate with people.
I'm curious if your candidacy will be different than your advocacy in the past. You have been a very, I think, outspoken and advocacy-centered Democrat, perhaps more than some other Democrats in the past who might have been a little bit more inclined to make peace or work across the aisle. Do you think that the large number of independent voters in Florida is going to encourage you to shift your messaging a little bit to perhaps be reaching a broader audience?
So at the end of the day, I care about hardworking people, and my advocacy has been about ensuring that hardworking people get the opportunity to be healthy, to be prosperous and safe. And that definitely resonates. We have had Republican leadership in our state for over 30 years. And since then, we have seen our home insurance costs skyrocket. Some people's tripled. Some people just got kicked off their insurance, as well as we've seen the healthcare costs rise. We've seen public schools closing. We have seen a mass exodus of educators from our state, as well as healthcare providers. And so at the end of the day, we need to be looking at doing things differently. All of the issues and the advocacy that I have done, the issues that I have raised have come from members of the community. And so I am going to continue to advocate for them. It's so funny because oftentimes Republicans and independents and Democrats and people who aren't even registered to vote, they call my office, not even just the ones that live in my district, but people who live in Republican districts as well as some of my Democratic colleagues at times. They call my office because they know that I am going to work for them. They call my office when they need help and they can't get in contact with their legislators. And so at the end of the day, it is all about helping hardworking Floridians here in our state and uplifting their issues and their concerns. And right now, they are tired of the politics as usual. I am someone who puts people over party, people over politics, and definitely people over profit.
Let's talk a little bit about your opponent, Ashley Moody. She is the incumbent senator. She was appointed by Governor Ron DeSantis. She was handpicked by him to succeed Senator Marco Rubio when he was tapped by the president for his administration. What has she done in office so far that you would have any objection to? Is there anything particularly about her policies or her positions that you would target in your campaign?
Yeah, most definitely. So for sure, she has voted against, consistently voted against the best interests of hardworking families across our state. She has voted to end the ACA subsidies. She does not want people to have access to health care. She also has just basically been non-existent. She has not been around. People don't even know who she is. People don't even know. Some people don't know that she's no longer the attorney general. They've never seen her before. The only time that some folks have heard from her is during an election year. And I'm the total opposite. I am constantly uplifting working families issues. I am constantly pushing back against greedy billionaires and corrupt corporations who actually fund Ashley Moody. That is who she's protecting and she's often propping up. And so I am the only person who is going to prop up the people, because at the end of the day, I work for the people. I don't work for billionaires. I don't work for special interest groups. The only special interests I have are for the people of Florida.
At the beginning of session, you posted a picture announcing that it was your last first day of session. You are not term limited until 2028. It is a seat that presumably you could stay in and hold until then. And you're choosing to step out of that fairly secure position to make a run for what is arguably a less secure future. Why are you choosing to do that?
The reason I'm doing that is the same conversation that I've had with Mrs. Jean from Apalachicola and many seniors all across our state and many people. I had the opportunity to meet Miss Jean this past weekend, and Miss Jean, who used to work as a personal messenger for J. Edgar Hoover, she received the message when Dr. Martin Luther King was shot and killed, and she had to hand deliver it to the FBI director. When I asked Miss Jean, how she felt right now as it relates to how it was when she was growing up in the segregated South. Miss Jean said it's deja vu. Too many of our seniors and our elders are having to fight or are witnessing their civil rights being eroded. They are witnessing the government not standing up for them and actually looking out for billionaires and looking out for these corporate interest groups, and are basically turning their backs on them. Seniors, I've traveled across this state and I've been to so many businesses, and I see our seniors who are working 40 hours a week because they can't even afford to rest and get their just due rest that they deserve. I am witnessing young people all across our state who are confused and worried because they don't feel like they'll be able to move out of their parents' houses if they graduate from college or high school and decide to get a job. These people are hurting here. more. And it's time we do something different. We can't keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. It's time to actually elect people who care about people, who are willing to stand up to parties, because I have stood up against my party as well, because at the end of the day, the only thing that I care about is the people of Florida. We deserve so much more. We deserve some to enjoy rest. We deserve to experience joy. And right now, people are terrified. I have countless folks that I've spoken with, countless people who are trying to figure out ways to leave this country because they either can't afford it anymore, or they are fearful that they're going to be attacked or brutalized because of the political rhetoric and all the violence and police and all the violence and the brutality that is state sanctioned by the Trump administration. And so it's going to be important for us to come together and lean into community and let them know that they want to keep us divided. But if we come together, we can lead with dignity and love, and we all can really achieve what is supposed to be the American dream.
I want to ask you, since you're mentioning sort of the mood and referencing kind of the enforcement that we're seeing around immigration, particularly about a bill that you've introduced called the Visible Act that would require agents who work for Homeland Security to remove their masks or to not mask their face when they're doing enforcement actions. Can you explain what is motivating you, if there's something in particular that you've seen that has been concerning to you?
Yeah, for sure. So, what motivated me to do that bill, to file that legislation in the first place, was reading the reports of women who had been attacked and sexually assaulted by masked men posing as ICE, even having the ICE verbiage on their outfits and their attires, right? And then most recently, this week, having watched a report from a police chief up north who stated that his off-duty police officers were being targeted by immigration officers with masks on and with guns drawn because they were simply Black and brown. And so I am concerned about the overall safety of the general public in our community, but I'm also concerned with the safety of the officers. We are a stand your ground state. And now with the Trump administration just going ahead and creating a memo stating that ICE officers basically can just go into your home with an administrative warrant and not anything really sufficient. I am concerned that some ICE officials may be shot and killed if they barge into a home. And so at the end of the day, we need to come together. I believe in a comprehensive and compassionate pathway to citizenship, but the terrorizing that's happening right now is not the way to do this.
And we should say that the FBI has issued a warning noting that there have been robberies and kidnappings and sexual assaults in several states that have been carried out by people posing as agents with masked faces. So that is something that's happening. You know, your voice is known as a, kind of an advocate and sometimes a very strong voice for that. You know, you've held demonstrations on the floor of the House. You've been very outspoken about the governor and his policies. But I wonder if, right now you have the sort of insulation of a Republican supermajority. Most of the things that Democrats want are not going to be achieved because of that supermajority in terms of legislation right now in the House. And I wonder if that gives you a little more freedom to speak your mind in a way that if you were, a U.S. senator representing a broader swath of voters and constituents, that you might not be able to speak quite as freely.
And the problem is that the U.S. senators, many of the U.S. senators, not all, have not been speaking up for the people. I have consistently spoken up for the people, period. All of the policies that I have filed that sometimes the Republicans have taken and placed in their bills, and the ones that they have not allowed to move would benefit people. They would not benefit greedy corporations that don't want to pay living wages to people, but that are padding the campaign coffers of elected officials. The system is rigged, and I only care about people. I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to be healthy, to be prosperous, to be safe, to experience joy, to experience rest, to have a vacation every now and then. And I will not stop talking and advocating for the people, because I think that's what everyone wants. Unless you are a greedy billionaire in a corrupt corporation, you want to just have people work until they die. And I don't believe that's what we deserve here in our state. And so that is why I am on the front lines, and that is why I will be fighting for the people of Florida to win this election.
And we know that you've got your legislative business ahead of you today. We're talking to you from Tallahassee, but in fact, you're planning on being in Jacksonville this weekend. Is that right? For some
I am
rally?
definitely planning on being in Jacksonville this week. You know, I have to come home. I am having a rally this upcoming Sunday from 2 to 5 at the Shops of Sherwood across the street from Lonnie Miller Park, as well as the Bob Hayes Sports Complex. It's located at 5045 Sutel Drive. I'm super excited. We have it's a great lineup, and it's going to be a rally. We also have food trucks from different diverse communities where people can, taste diversity. And it's going to be an opportunity for us to just be in community with each other and to really love on each other and to actually to build trust and to start hoping again. Change can't wait, and so I want folks to know this is about the people of Florida. This campaign is a people powered campaign. This campaign is about the people. It is not about me. And I plan on uplifting all of their issues and their voices over the next few months.
Well, State Representative Angie Nixon, we appreciate you making time for us this morning. Thanks for being here, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, local author Nikesha Williams explores a generational jinx in her new book, The Seven Daughters of Dupree. Welcome back. Well, though it's her 8th published book, Jacksonville author Nikesha Elise Williams' Seven Daughters of Dupree is her first with a Big Five publishing house. She joins us now on the eve of its publication and the start of her national book tour. Nikesha, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So people will, of course, know you from your appearance on this program on the Week in Review and your work with Jacksonville Today and your podcast, but this is a big deal. And first of all, just a big congratulations.
Thank you.
It is a huge milestone. You've been writing for a long, long time, but having a novel that is published by Simon and Schuster is really a degree change and kind of a change in kind in terms of your work.
Very much. It's been really surreal.
Mhm.
That's the word that's like been top of mind. Like the whole experience has been very surreal.
Yeah. It is a book that I told you this morning I have not yet finished,
It's
but
fine.
have loved reading so far. And honestly, as I said, it was I didn't want to rush it. I didn't want to try to just blast through it in order to be ready for the interview. But it is a beautiful read, and it has been blurbed by people of some magnitude, including Honore Jeffers, who wrote the Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois, Elizabeth Gilbert. Very positive things to say. And so tell us a little bit about, first of all, how this book came to be.
It started with an idea that I had in 2019. I had a different title at the time, a working title that kind of informed some of the storyline and the plot points with the mother and the daughter. But one of the main ideas was that I wanted to write a story about a girl who didn't know her father. And I always say it was supposed to be such a very, very simple story. She doesn't know her father. She has all this angst, and at the very end, she finds him, which I realize now is not that compelling to sustain an entire novel, which I found as I started writing it.
Huh.
And so I wrote kind of that version in the first draft. Around 2021 is when I first started working on it. And I got bored with my protagonist, the first character that you meet, Tati. And so then, like, midway through that first draft, I switched to her mother's point of view and to figure out, well, what happens between the mother and the father that would make him not be around. And then I went back and, like, gave them some resolution. And in that resolution, there's a grandmother that was always there, very messy and surly and sardonic with her one-liners and quips. And she said something that at the time I kind of wrote past it. And the line is something like, what do you think happens to light-skinned women in the South? And it's still there in this final version. And when I finished that first draft, well, I was like, well, what happened to her? What happened to this woman? And I had this vision, which is actually the book cover, of this woman walking down a dirt road in this white dress. And then the vision got a little wider and I could see what was behind her. And I was like, oh, okay. But it still didn't really click in for me until I was listening to a really good author friend of mine, Disha Philyal, who was talking on a podcast about this workshop that she teaches about the very best, writing your best first line for a piece of work, so that readers know from the first line that they're going to be hooked. And so I asked myself, well, what would my first line be? And the line came to me that's the first line of the novel in the prologue. And the prologue is only a paragraph, but it says, they cut off her head because she ran. And I was like, ooh, well, that's violent and gruesome. And I knew exactly what it was referring to. I knew exactly what I was going to do in the instant that it came to me, that I was going to have a generational story, that I wanted to go back to 1860. I knew what the ending was going to be, even though all I had was this line. And so it really invigorated my initially very simple premise.
Wow. It must have been kind of a thrill to have that come together at that moment and realize that you sort of had this epic tale that was going to involve generations of women and, a lot of family history, secrets, violence.
It was actually kind of scary because someone was saying to me the other day, I was like, how do you set out to write a story about 7 generations? And I was like, if someone told me that was what I was going to be doing, I wouldn't have done it, because it is very daunting. And so because that wasn't the plan, once it became the new direction, I kind of had to keep asking myself those questions. Okay, like, well, how many generations, how many women, what are their issues? What am I going to have each of them tackle? And then also in the crafting of the novel, I was like, well, I don't want to have to write an entire book with just these other extra characters when I have this first draft with these first 2. And the way that I thought about it, and I think what makes the read rich, if I say so myself, is that because I thought about the characters and just their turning points in their lives, where they kind of have a character break between who they were before and how they are after something happens in their life, I wrote just enough into them that it doesn't feel bogged down, or, as my agent said, summarized to death. Like, you get the action and you get it in scene,
Yeah.
and they're all there and they're coming in and out of each other's lives, and it works.
Because it really moves. There is
Mhm.
not this, tons of backstory, as you say,
Yeah.
that kind of, weighs it down. And the story is, in some ways about this curse, this multi-generational curse that the women, the daughters of Dupree, can only bear female children. But there's so many other things that are passed down from
Mhm.
generation to generation. There are secrets, as we mentioned, but also this generational trauma and how it is rekindled generation after generation in ways that are different but similar. Um, it is a difficult topic to write about.
Yes. Knowing from the first line, when that line came to me, that I was going to deal with enslavement, I didn't necessarily cringe, but I understand from a reader point of view, because I'm a reader first, that not everybody can handle the horrors and the traumas of the antebellum South and enslavement. And even as a reader, as much as I love historical fiction, as much as I love history, I can't always stay there. Sometimes I do need something lighter. So when I knew what I was going to do with the enslaved ancestor, I knew I was only going to do it once. It was going to be at the end of the book. And that way you spend the majority of the novel, 97% of it, in freedom, in where the Black people have their own autonomy over their bodies, over their land, over what they want to do with their lives. They're making their own choices. They're not being forced. So that when you get to those last 3 chapters of the novel where it is an enslavement, you're kind of ready for it because you want to know what happened, because I've set you up for that. But we don't stay there. We go in, we get through it, and we come out.
And you brought a copy of the book with you, and I might have you just hold up the interior page.
Yeah.
Because it is this interesting family tree. It lays out the lineage of the women whose stories
I see
that you're telling. And so for people who are watching online, you'll see that there's a lot of characters that are named, and then there's a few that aren't. And starting right at the top, this mysterious character, there is a man's name mentioned. And I'm curious, first of all, the man himself, if there's any local ties to your choice on the name there.
Yes. So the man's name is Zephaniah Foster Dupree. And so the local tie is to Kingsley Plantation. The owner of that plantation was Zephaniah Kingsley, and he was the one who had kidnapped Anna Kingsley from Senegal in the late 1790s when she was about 13 years old, brought her to Cuba first, and then on to Florida, where she was acknowledged as his wife. And when she arrived about 13, 14 years old, she was already pregnant with his children. So that very much informed the enslaved ancestor at the head of the line. And then I gave him the middle name Foster because at the time that I was writing, I was obsessed with the story of the Clotilda, which is why the novel goes to 1860, because that is when that ship was brought into Mobile Bay with, I believe it was 120 enslaved Africans. It's believed to be one of the last slave ships to come into the United States, even though the slave trade should have been abolished in 1808. So I wanted to reference and pay homage to both of those historical events.
And remind us of that ship. I mean, the story of that ship a little bit, if you can.
So yeah, the Clotilda slave ship started off as a bet between 2 white men in Alabama that said, I bet you I can get a ship of Africans in here. And so they built a ship that was supposed to be very narrow and very fast. They went to the kingdom of Dahomey, bought 120 enslaved African people, put them in the ship, brought them back to the United States through Mobile Bay, offloaded them, and then brought the ship, I think it's in the Alabama River, burned it and sunk it. And it was not found until 2019. And so the thing about it is that because this happened in 1860, the Civil War was 1861 to 1865. So when those people were emancipated, they remembered what happened to them. Like, this is where I came from. And so Zora Neale Hurston wrote the book Barracoon, which followed Cujo Lewis, who was considered one of the last Black chattel slaves, and who was among that group of Black men and women who were captured and brought to the United States. And then they also formed their own town just outside of Mobile called Africa Town. And so in the Seven Daughters of Dupree, I am drawing on that history and that lore. It is not Africa Town. It is not Mobile. It is in Alabama. There's a fictional town because I wanted to do something else with the storyline. But that is what I'm referencing there.
Yeah. And so one of the main characters in this book is a hairdresser by trade, but hair is a really big part of this story. And it's a way that, I mean, sometimes the women are almost kind of like literally weaving, you know, part of the story through their expressions and through their work on each other, you know, as they're styling each other's hair. How did that become such a deep core of the book?
It was always there from the beginning. The second daughter, Nadia, who is the main character, Tati's mother, was always a hairdresser from the very first draft, from the very first idea I ever had in 2019. Both of my grandmothers were hairdressers. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, going to many a basement and kitchen beautician. So that kind of culture, beauty culture, was always in my life. But Black women's hair specifically can represent so many different things, and it can be politicized. And, there has been such a movement, especially as of late, for Black women to really embrace their natural hair. And all of that history is kind of bound up in our head, how we wear it, how we style it, what we do with it, whether or not we know how to do it at all. And so once I got to the expanded storyline and I knew what was going to happen to the enslaved ancestor, I was like, how would she feel about all these generations later, her great great whatever granddaughter being a beautician? And so I wanted to weave all of that, sometimes the trauma that we hold in our hair, into the story and let it kind of dissipate with every generation, so that by the time you get to Nadia and even Tati, they don't have those hangups and they feel a different way about their hair than maybe some of their other ancestors did.
Yeah, it's a really interesting metaphor and kind of, tool, but it is not heavy-handed at all. It really is just
Thank
kind of,
you.
there in the background. I want to ask you a little bit about your other books because you began writing and self-publishing. As we mentioned, this is your 8th published book, but it was not an easy path, and it really has required a lot of self-starting and hustle to get
Lot
where
of
you.
hustle, lot of hustle.
So your first book was called Four Women.
Yeah.
It was published, I think, in 2017.
Uh-huh.
But even that was a couple years after you'd finished it. Tell us a little bit about just the work of self-publishing and what you faced getting that book even on, on print.
So, Four Women was a journey for sure. I started the novel in 2013. In 2014, I was like 7 chapters from the end. I lost the manuscript and had to start over. So then I finished it in 2015. And I always wanted to be traditionally published like I am now with the Seven Daughters of Dupree, with the agent and the big house from the get-go. And so when I finished Four Women, I started querying agents. It took until like the end of 2015, and I actually found agents, signed with them. In 2016, we revised, and went on submission to publishing houses. And I got close with 2 houses, but eventually there was no sale. So so a lot of people at that point have to make a choice. Like, that can be the book that you put in the drawer and you never bring it out again, or you can self-publish it, or you work on something new. Because I was still working in television at the time, and because the process to get an agent was so long, I had already kind of started flirting with the idea of self-publishing. So I had the graphic designer at the television station where I worked at the time do the cover and build my website. And so when I realized that I was going to self-publish, I think I launched, dropped the cover and the website and like my headshots or whatever in like February of 2017, and then spent that entire year creating content and promoting the novel that eventually came out in November of that year. And a lot of the work that went into that was finding and hiring editors. I hired a copy editor because I had done so many revisions with my agents that they didn't need a developmental editor. At least that's what they told me. So I hired a copy editor. I already had the cover. I had to figure out which self-publishing platforms were the best to use. I think I started with Kindle Direct Publishing, which is owned by Amazon. Back then it was called Create Space. The other one that I've used is Ingram Spark, which is a global distributor that can distribute books all around the world and to your local library. So they're really reputable to use. A lot of small independent bookstores don't like working with Amazon and won't do it because Amazon has really cannibalized the book industry. And so it was finding how to do that. I started my own imprint because at that time, if you didn't have your own label or imprint, the self-publishing company would put their name on the book. And I was like, I'm doing all this work. I'm putting my name on it. So I went down to the tax collector's office and got my little Sunbiz fictitious name and paid my little money.
Wow.
And started my imprint and had my brother create me a logo. Just this year, I actually finished all the trademarks for both the name of the company and the logo on the primary register. So, I mean, I started an imprint. I called all the people in television and radio that I knew. Melissa Ross was the host back then, and she interviewed me about Four Women in 2017. And I just started from there. And then once I realized that I could self-publish, I just kept going. And so I did that from 2017 to 2020. I did 5 novels and a poetry collection.
And I know that your involvement, because you're a reader first, as you say, you're very into the experience of reading, how it looks, trying to make it a beautiful piece of work in
Yeah.
addition to being a really good piece of work. And so you're even doing things like page layout and you're
Yeah,
involved in every
I
level.
would whenever I did a book and, like, because I started self-publishing and then other people found out about it, I actually ended up publishing, like, books for, like, 7 or 8 other authors locally and I believe in Georgia and in some other places. But anytime I would do a book, I would be their editor, so I would read it cover to cover, give them notes, give them feedback, try to make it the best that it could be, and then I would make sure I would get actual books off of my shelf that I loved and mimic the layout. I never wanted my book or any book with my name on it or my company's name on it to ever be judged or stigmatized because it was self-published because it looked less than. And I really prided myself on that. Like, I'm not putting anything out with my name on it that does not meet what I would, I guess, call like a Barnes and Noble standard. Like, I wanted my books to be able to stand beside any book in any bookstore anywhere, and you wouldn't know that it was self-published.
And yet, self-publishing has less so now, but has always carried a little bit of a stigma.
It's changed a lot.
Okay. Oh, I want to ask you about that because, to the extent that that's something that impacts people or the way that they consume books, I'm curious if the publishing industry also has some sort of regard towards people who've done a lot of self-publishing, if that in any way impacts their willingness to embrace you or kind of bring you aboard, or if it's just they can see your work in this finished version and maybe it is helpful.
So in 2026, I would say absolutely not. And there are several authors that I know and have interviewed who go back and forth between self-publishing and traditional publishing, just depending upon what they're working on and what the money's looking like. I actually interviewed my agent and my editor for this season of my podcast in the roll up to the release of the novel of Seven Daughters of Dupree. And I asked them this exact question. And my agent was like, that you had self-published, it showed me that you were going to be relentless about it. And we would have a good working relationship because you were going to do it anyway. And what my editor said, that's at the acquiring stage where they're making the deal, because I had such a deep backlist, they went back and tried to get a copy of not necessarily my self-published books, but the nonfiction book that I did in 2022 for LSU Press, Mardi Gras Indians. They got a copy of that. They went deep into my Instagram feed. They started looking at all of my freelance articles, to see who I was and that I had, I didn't just show up one day. I had a deep byline history and work behind my name that made them want to take a chance on me. So for any aspiring writers, self-publishing is but one path to traditional publishing if you want to go that route.
And don't necessarily think that they're only going to be looking at this one thing you bring them. I mean, they might be digging into all of that to be like, what have you done?
I had when she told me that, I had no idea that they went that deep into my history of what I had done until, she told me a few months ago.
How hard is it to be edited on the level that you're being edited now? Are you resistant to editing? Are you somebody that embraces it? Do you get a little prickly when people are making suggestions about, maybe shifting this around or moving something or changing the trajectory of a character?
In the very beginning, I might have been a little prickly about editing, but because with 4 women and that experience being so long, and how the major revisions that I did with my agents then to get it to where it needed to be, I've always been open to the edit process. And of course, you're attached to it, you're an artist and you're sensitive about it. But after a while, you kind of got to let that sensitivity go. So that may not mean you accept the edits right away, but you get there. With Seven Daughters specifically, we did the first 2 rounds of edits, and they weren't that bad. The 3rd round of edits, I could have cried. So I was I got this long letter back with all of this feedback because it wasn't just my editor. Other people in the company had read it. The publisher, the head of marketing had read it, and they had feedback. And that happened just because when you do a large book deal, there's a lot of money on the line. More people have more say. And so that 3rd round of edits came back, and I was like, oh my God. And I was just looking at it The thing about editing, though, is that even if you don't take all of the suggested feedback, you can edit in the spirit of what they want. And so when I read through it after like about a week or two of what it seemed that they wanted me to do, I was able to, I don't think I took any of their suggestions, but I was able to find a compromise
Yeah.
that I felt kept the integrity of what I wanted to do and the characters that I wanted to put forth first, um, intact, while still also cutting other things and trimming and tightening to make it the best book that it could be.
It sounds a little bit like when we're getting edited by a lawyer and they're saying, you're going to have to put this in. And you say, well, how about if we phrase it this way? So it
Right.
doesn't sound quite so lawyerly,
Yeah, it's a very collaborative effort.
Yeah. And so you are, as we said, this is now launching. The book is formally launching on the 27th.
Tuesday is publication day. Tuesday, January 27th, 2026 is publication day.
But if people are in Jacksonville and they're interested in hot off the presses, early copy signed by Nikesha, I mean, you've got an event this weekend.
Yes. If you want a book now, like in a couple of days, come to the main library in Jacksonville, downtown on Laura Street, Saturday, 11 a.m. It's a lit chat. I'll be interviewed by another local author, and then I'll be signing books afterwards. And the bookstore is San Marco Books and More. They already have their copies. I know that because I got an email yesterday saying, hey, our books arrived. So, yeah. Come to the library.
You also have a tour that you're doing, a national tour to promote the book. Tell us a little bit about, how you designed the cities, because you have a tie to some of them or maybe even all of them. So how did you decide, or was it more of your editors deciding?
The publicist, God bless her. God bless Sydney Morris. The publicist designed my tour, but the way she designed it was with where she thought I would have the greatest impact and where booksellers are really integral to the community. So after Jacksonville, I'll be in Atlanta on Monday, the 26th, praying the ice storm doesn't get us. And then Greenville, South Carolina, Washington, D.C., Chicago, and then New Orleans.
Yeah, and those are cities that you have a tie to. You're from New Orleans. You grew up in Chicago.
Yeah. Everywhere but Greenville. D.C., I have a partnership with the bookstore there. But I guess the Greenville store, they really do like really nice events, and so I'll be there.
And so what does that look like? Do you know what to expect from this tour? How do you go into it?
I am so nervous. I have not slept well in about 3 days. I have all the anxiety. I really want people to come there. It's ticketed, so when people buy a ticket or register for the event, because the event in Atlanta is at another library, the ticketed events come with a signed copy of the book. That's what you're paying for. But some people are skittish. $30 don't spend the same as it used to. And it was like, am I going to buy a book or am I going to get gas? Right. So I'm very nervous, but I'm very excited. I want to meet everybody. I want to see everybody. Like, if you're trying to see me, I'm trying to see you.
Yeah. Well, Nikesha, big congratulations. This is a huge, milestone in your career, but it's just a wonderful book, and I encourage people to get it. It's called The Seven Daughters of Dupree by Nikesha Elise Williams. Nikesha, have a great book tour.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, a local book festival promotes community engagement through literature to honor the work of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.
Scenic Jacksonville presents the Great Cities Symposium on February 5th. Victor Dover, city builder and town planner, shares how he has transformed cities, streets, and neighborhoods through urban design across the U.S. Tickets available at scenicjacksonville.org. AEG presents The Beach Boys, saluting 60 years of pet sounds with 2 shows at the Ponte Vedra Concert Hall, Monday, January 26th at 5 and 8:30 p.m. Tickets and information available at axs.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Highway, hospital, home, work. Where injuries happen can make a difference in the law and the outcome.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
Discover new and classic music every Saturday night starting at 8 with Mr. Al Pete as we stroll through the neighborhood. And then stay tuned for Bop City, Electro Lounge, and Blues Horizon, only on WJCT News 89.9 Saturday nights.
Film at WJCT presents You Got Gold, a celebration of John Prine, a star-studded tribute event to one of history's greatest songwriters. Join icons like Bonnie Raitt, Brandi Carlile, Jason Isbell, and more as they share intimate stories and perform his classic songs. Critics call it a joyous tribute and a conversation with memory. January 28th at WJCT Studios. Doors open at 6:30, film starts at 7. Popcorn and cash bar available. Go to wjct.org/film for tickets.
Changing vaccine guidelines and cuts to research and public health programs. These have defined the first year of RFK Jr.'s Department of Health and Human Services. Tomorrow, our .gov series continues going inside changes at HHS and at the CDC and how organizations and scientists are responding. The upheaval in the federal public health system. Next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, authors and literary advocates are gathering for the third annual JAX Urban Book Festival as part of the MLK Week of Service. Here to talk about it is Dr. V. Valicia Dunbar, featured author and organizer of the festival. Dr. V, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
And we're also joined by Natasha Slaughter, the Events Festival Chair. Good morning, Natasha.
Good morning.
So first of all, tell us a little bit about this, Dr. V. What is the vision? This is third year, as we mentioned, but what's the kind of organizing conceit behind the annual festival?
Yeah, the Jacksonville Urban Book Festival is a program sponsored by Dream Week, Inc. Dream Week is a local nonprofit that we founded in 2018 to celebrate community progress and social engagement through the lens of Dr. King's dream. And so during 2019, 2020, we launched the book festival as an extension of that to celebrate art, culture, food, but most importantly, what I'm passionate about, books.
Yeah. And so how do you reach out and get people to participate? Who is the target audience? And who are some of the people that you're bringing in this year?
Everyone and anyone who's interested in reading, literacy, but also in celebrating Jacksonville as a destination. One of the important things about Dream Week is that when I moved here 10 years ago, we felt as if there wasn't enough community engagement, like we said. And so bringing people out for one day to celebrate through the lens of Dr. King's dream, families, young adults, we have children's events, we have, of course, our authors, vendors, everyone to really celebrate Jacksonville as a destination.
Natasha, what is it that got you involved in the organization and the festival in the first place?
Well, I am an author enthusiast. I'm an avid reader, and I always call myself an author groupie. So I always wanted to be a part of something like this where I was able to, network with authors, be able to support them not only from their marketing efforts, but also just to get them out into the community, because there are so many authors out there that they've published their books and they want to, have it exposed to the community and get people excited about it, but sometimes they didn't have a vehicle to get that done.
Yeah.
So this is an opportunity to let them shine.
And what does it do for the community itself in terms of the people who are able to meet these authors? I mean, what does it bring them when they're able to connect a book that they like or a book that they might be reading to the person who actually wrote it?
Well, for me, I think it's an amazing opportunity to meet the person that wrote the book that you're so interested in, that you immersed yourself in, that you identified with the characters, they brought this character to life that you identify with. And so it's an honor and a privilege to not only meet the author, but also gain other books by them, and also introduce you to other new authors. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you stay within that same genre or that same author, and then you find this new nugget of information from another author, and you're excited about it.
People love autographed books.
Yeah, they do. They do. And they do love to meet the author, and you are an author. So what does it mean for you to be able to kind of have this platform and interact with your reading public?
Yeah, I'm a business coach by trade, and so the profession of writing is what I like to share and expose people to. How can you self-publish? How can you find an agent? How can you, work within your own community to tell your own stories? And so the storytelling piece, working with book clubs, bookstores, is also important. So for me, it's continuing to learn, to educate, to train, but to give people an opportunity to start their own business as an author.
And there is a child focus, I think it's fair to say, with this festival.
Yes.
Yeah. And also a reason for kids to attend, because every kid that attends actually leaves with a free book. Is that right?
Well, we don't have that specific item this year.
Okay.
But in the past, we have been able to do so.
All right.
So we
So the
normally
books
have
will be
a
for sale.
Yes, books will be for sale by the children authors, and then we have some giveaways, book giveaways, as part of attending the book festival. You can enter yourself into a drawing to receive a free book.
And what other event, like what else is going on? We said this is at James Weldon Johnson Park. What other
Yes.
things will be there on offer for kids?
Okay. So we do have a children's area with games. We have a face painter and balloon artist that will be there from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. And then just the opportunity to meet other children that are engaged in books. Quite often we find that children get together, they play, they're excited to meet other children that are readers as well.
Yeah, and there's also an event for aspiring authors as well on Friday the 23rd. Is that right?
Absolutely. The authors workshops. So
Okay.
every year we have one day dedicated to authors, the trade, the skill of writing. And so we have published authors who are and marketing professionals who are there to help authors to understand the stages of writing and the community of writing and how they can get their books out.
All right. Well, it's the JAX Urban Book Festival. It's Saturday, January 24th from 10 to 6 at James Weldon Johnson Park in downtown Jacksonville. Natasha Slaughter, Felicia Dunbar, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you
Thank you
so
for
much.
having
It will
us.
be a warm day this year, so come out, everyone.
Yeah, it should be beautiful. All right. Well, that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you missed anything, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight, or you can go to firstcoastconnect.org and find all of our past and current shows. Join us tomorrow when we discuss the week's top headlines with our Media Roundtable. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Florida Theater presents An Evening with Itzhak Perlman. This multimedia program interweaves storytelling alongside personal photos, documentary clips, and performances by the violinist and his pianist. Monday, January 26th at 8 p.m. Tickets and information available at floridatheater.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjax.com.
This is WJCT News